Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dorothy here from the CCMA. Delighted to see you joining us this morning on this beautiful sunny morning, even though we know the temperatures have dropped, but I had to close the blind here because of the sun coming through, which is nice for a Friday morning. We're going to give a couple of minutes, as always, for everybody to join. Hi, Nick. Hi, Connor. Hi, Emma. See a good few friendly faces there. So good to see you all. And on screen, you'll see Nicola and Mark, and I'll do the formal introductions in a moment. But as you will have known from the title of today's webinar, what makes a strategic or partnership strategic? And this webinar is on foot of FMI and Electric Ireland winning the accolade for Outsource Partnership of the Year at our 2021 awards. And this is always a great award category from a CCMA perspective. So you really get to see what's happening in the industry in terms of partnerships, how partnerships have grown, the strategic approach to partnership management, but also just the really good framework that companies put in place to make sure they get the most of their partnership. And obviously in FMI's case, we're talking about business process outsourcing, but it can be in a range of different products and services that are provided. So I think this morning's webinar will be very insightful just for companies on it that are engaging in strategic partnerships to make sure you get the most out of it and to make sure you put the ground rules in place from day one. So we're particularly delighted to be joined by the client in this case, which is obviously Mark from Electric Ireland. And it's great as part of this award category every year. We say to the companies who are entering, it has to be both parties that come forward, and we have a presentation for this award category as well. And that really helps to show the strength of the relationship and how the partners work together. So I think I mentioned, I just pushed it out on LinkedIn there a few minutes ago, that we have a prize this morning. We found in recent weeks with our webinars that if we put the carrot of a prize, we get some really great questions and some really good engagement. And that's what we're looking for again this morning. So really encourage you to come up with a smart question or some insight that you think will be valuable as we go along. This is quite an interactive presentation, so there's a couple of sections to it. I have a couple of questions for Nicola and for Mark. But as you know, as always, on the right-hand side, you'll see the questions panel or the chat panel. Put in any observations, comments, or questions that you ask. So I'm going to hand you over to Nicola De Beer, who is the Managing Director of FMI. And Nicola's going to explain a little bit about FMI for those of you who don't know it. And then she will hand over and Mark will introduce himself, and then we'll kick into the presentation. So Nicola, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Dorothy, and thanks for having us today. We're delighted. Just to tell everyone a little bit about FMI, we're an Irish-owned business. We're a field management business. We have multiple service offerings across FMCG, utilities, retail, but obviously the contact centre is a huge investment area for us. And so we've been in operation for 27 years, and our business is all about building brands, influencing the consumers, and obviously being the brand in terms of our people. So we've been working with Electric Ireland in partnership for the last 10 years, believe it or not. And we were delighted, obviously, to win the accolade last year. It was something we were really proud about. So today, as Dorothy said, I'm delighted that Mark's joined us. I've dragged him in, and he is here to share what we believe some of the key insights are. But just to, Mark, you might just give everyone, I mean, we all know who Electric Ireland is, but just give us a little insight there.
Thanks, Nicola. Yeah, I won't bore you with Electric Ireland. Hopefully a lot of you are familiar with what we do. Just my own role, so I'm sales manager for Republic of Ireland, and I look after a team that manages all our sales channels, some of which are in-house and some of which are outsourced, like FMI, a key partner for us. And effectively, in a nutshell, we're responsible for acquiring new customers and retaining our existing customer base, and if we can, in the process of upselling to those existing customers. And obviously we do that with a large number of stakeholders in our organisation to support that strategy. So that's it in a nutshell.
Great. So what we've done is pulled a presentation together, really challenging and trying to give some insights into what is a strategic partnership and how you can build on that. And I think for us, we thought hopefully some of these insights might help some of you who are maybe going on that journey, and certainly have helped us over the years. So the first part really is for us about having a clear foundation. Partnerships really never go out of style. And the reality is successful partnerships don't just happen. There's a huge amount of work and effort and energy that goes into creating them, and establishing a clear framework, as Dorothy mentioned, is absolutely vital in order to go on that journey. It seems so obvious, but it's really crucial. Nurturing honest and clear communication channels at every level in the organization is something you really need to start from the beginning. And it's all about keeping everybody in the loop and taking them on that journey. So I think for us, it's about recognizing within our teams each other's capabilities, the differences in culture or the similarities in culture, and all the different motivational factors which I think help drive and establish a good, strong foundation to build this relationship on. So I know, Dorothy, that you mentioned there was a lot around how we cultivate and engage the brand and the teams with regards to that, and how we then, you know, keep those individuals within the business. And this is obviously a key piece when we look at establishing those foundations there.
Absolutely, and I think I didn't actually mention this earlier. My background is actually in BPO, so I was 20 years of BPO. I loved the industry. I loved the whole client relationship and the engagement. Once you got the deal over the line, and you know, you put so much work into getting the deal over the line, you really need to ensure that you build on those foundations, as you're saying. So, Mark, what do you think are the fundamentals of establishing the outsource model from your experience?
Well, from my experience, Dorothy, like one of the key things is having a clear idea of the experience and expertise that you're looking for from the outset. So we do have a rigorous selection process, as Nicola knows very well, and it's important that as a client that we're clear about what we're looking for, what's the scope of work that we're looking to do, and as I said, the client, so that we get a proper fit when it comes to that company. I think we would want then obviously to set clear expectations on the back of that with our outsource partners, so that we're all very clear, not just on the quantity. So from a sales perspective, obviously we've targets and metrics, but also from a quality point of view, it's hugely important that we operate in the right manner. And I know communication is a bit of a glib statement, but it is true, and I know Nicola's mentioned it. But I think there's a huge onus on us as a client to listen. I mean, for three kind of particular reasons. One, we've talked about the expertise, so there's no point in using an outsource partner for their expertise and experience if we don't actually listen to that expertise, in particular where they've got a number of other large clients. I think secondly, particularly obviously in the case of FMI, they are the voice and the face of our brand, so we need to listen to understand that the agents in particular have what they need to do that job properly. And then, hugely importantly, they're also the eyes and ears of the brand. So for us to get an understanding of what's going on in the marketplace, it's hugely more important now than it ever has been with an ever-changing market. So those things are hugely important. We as I say, go through a rigorous process, and we need to trust our outsource partners to deliver that expertise. So we try to not micromanage where we can, and leave them to do what they're best at doing.
And I think that's hugely important. And Nicola, from your perspective, how do you instill the brand into your team? Because as Mark is saying, they are the front of house, as it were, for his customer base. So how do you bring about that cultivation of an engaged workforce that very clearly know who the client is, who they're working for, etc.?
I think, Mark mentioned it, the communication thing is one thing, but the trust, and for us it's about the empowerment, because being able to empower people to have the confidence to talk to the customer as the client, that comes from the top all the way down. And if we weren't empowered to do our job and use our expertise, we wouldn't be able to pass that on. So I think that's a key piece for us. I think transparency with teams. So, when changes happen, which they inevitably do, the clarity on communication, transparency on that. It's always about the collective we. It's never about us and them. And that's it sounds, again, very simple to do, but difficult when things go wrong. So it is about how we fix the situation, or how we deal with the challenge. And I think by trying to create a vested interest in the brand, it's about client engagement, so that they can see and be involved. It's about that communication, but it's also about celebrating the wins as well as, you know, dealing with the challenges. So that retention culture is really the fabric of our businesses, as we call it, the secret sauce. You know, it's what makes people want to stay working on sometimes really challenging campaigns. So it's about that holistic view of the campaign instead of just one element.
And I suppose now is a particularly busy time, and we all know what's going on in terms of the energy crisis. So I presume you're supporting the team as best you can in terms of, I would assume your volumes have increased significantly over the last few months and will continue to do so.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, that is a challenge day to day, dealing with at the forefront of consumers. And when things happen that are outside of everyone's control, you know, you can understand how challenging it is, because we are all customers ourselves. So it's being, you know, just equipping the team with the right tools, and obviously having the support from our clients to give them the right information, give them the best solutions possible to the situation that they find themselves in, really. So I think moving on from that, I think we can talk about, Mark mentioned accountability and metrics. And for us, this was one of the sort of key pillars that the relationship is built on. And when we're talking about accountability and metrics, especially in the contact center world, I mean, that's taken as a given and it's sort of old news. But the good news is that the detail and the transparency of that information is really key. And trust is linked directly to that element of transparency. So that becomes the very center of the relationship. The great thing for everybody who's tuning in is that there are lots of tools that allow you to build those elements around trust. And obviously the tools are showcasing your financial performance, your key performance indicators, reviewing everything and having full transparency and visibility. And that allows discussions then to see how we can add value or what challenges we face as a collective. So I think for us as a collective, accountability and metrics can be used in a really positive way to reinforce a strategic partnership.
And when you say accountability and transparency, like, can you give us an example? So sort of what sort of data do you provide to Mark and his team? I think we've lost you off screen there for a minute, Nicola. They're here. But what sort of information, or how do they get the information? Is it a daily report? Can they log into your system? Just a little bit more about the details about that would be great, Nicola.
Yeah, I think we have a great system, and I think for us it's all about transparency. So Mark and the team can log directly into a system. Everything we see, they see. And I know some people would be terrified, saying, why would you do that? You know, and the advantages so outweigh the disadvantages, because the reality is that it increases joint engagement. We're all looking at the same information. We're all looking at it in real time. And most importantly, we can work collaboratively to solve whatever the challenge is. Because again, going back to the collective within this, we might be faced with a customer, we might be faced with increased call volumes or whatever it is. But that is directly linked to what marketing are experiencing and being measured on. So it's that collaborative approach to the challenges and to the wins. And then obviously it moves it away from that transactional relationship, because you know, the team are not waiting necessarily for a report to see that. Of course, we provide a more detailed insights report based on different timeframes. But again, it's delving into the detail, it all being available to them to see at the same time.
So it's very much a proactive approach in terms of, you know, waiting 2 weeks later and say, oh, by the way, 2 weeks ago, this was the challenge we were dealing with. It's real time for sure.
Yes, yeah.
And Mark, can I ask you, how do you manage your internal stakeholders in terms of how you manage the partnership, and you know, how, again, you feed back the data that you're receiving?
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely important, and it has never been more important. I think the last probably obviously a couple of years since COVID, but in particular when we've had the focus on energy and those pressures, is to give context. So, you know, there's the analytics and the metrics, but as I mentioned earlier, like the eyes and ears of our customers and potential customers are the agents, and to give context to what's going on in the market is hugely important, in conjunction with our other channels, so that we can form a picture of what's going on, what are the pain points for customers, where are we lacking, where do we need to improve, and it's that continuous kind of improvement that we're looking at. And also then internal stakeholders, like we need obviously to provide support for our outsource partners. So engaging with them, IT or finance or whatever we need to do, if it's additional resource or if it's improvements that we need to make, is vital. And then importantly, it really does help us fine tune things like our marketing. So, the old adage of 50% of marketing is wasted. We're trying to obviously always understand what works and what doesn't. And then our campaigns, a variety of campaigns, both to existing customers and to new customers. It's invaluable that kind of engaging with our stakeholders internally to understand how we can continue to evolve as a business. And it also kind of validates our understanding internally, or challenges it. So if we have our own concept of what's going on, it really does help to support or to challenge our concepts of what's happening in the market.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that. We have a group at the moment meeting as a special interest group of managers responsible for quality assurance within their operation, and we had our first big sort of group meeting about a week ago, and that's all. The discussion was very much about data, having the facts to support the analysis or the proposals in terms of how you're going to change a process or open a new channel, and you really need that raw data to be able to then decide what course of action you need to take. So it's crucially important. I know you're going to talk about building a dynamic.
I think I would add as well, I think it's important for the teams as well to feel that they're being heard, so that they're actually their voice is important, which it is to us internally with our stakeholders, and that it matters and it can make a difference.
Great, perfect, thank you.
And I suppose from our final pillar was really around a dynamic partnership. And I think the first important element for all partners to recognize is that you must recognize that the scope of that relationship is going to shift over time. And that's a really important piece. Sometimes I think people go into relationships thinking they're only going to do one service or one element, and this is going to be it for the lifetime. And I think that's one of the really important elements that we've established with Electric Ireland, that ever-changing landscape. The most important thing when you know the landscape is going to change is that planning is absolutely key for the success of that, and especially for the teams, for the systems. And all those changes need to be communicated to the teams, and they need to be workshopped, and it needs to be done in a collaborative manner, because one change in one area affects very often multiple stakeholders on this side. So every relationship comes with that, its own challenges, but an emphasis on clarity, on proactive management, as Mark said, accountability and agility. It not only extends the life cycle of the partnership, but it also creates that added value and productivity that can be seen in different areas. So I think that's really key.
And Mark, do you want to comment on that in terms of what your view would be on that collaborative approach?
Yeah, I could probably talk quite a while about that. I mean, and I suppose we should put a context on this, as Nicola said. Listen, there will be bumps along the road. I mean, certainly, it's not perfect. It's always a work in progress. You're always trying to improve. But I mean, if COVID has taught us anything, it's the necessity to be agile. Our former chief exec described his feeling of it's like building a bridge while you're standing on it. You just don't know what the next step is going to be, and that's almost what it's felt like the last couple of years. And collaboration has never been more important, because we need the support of our outsource partners to help us build that bridge. So one step at a time. And as mentioned, like those data and insights are ever more crucial. It helps us understand the challenges that are out there, and there's significant challenges out there at the moment, and likely will continue to be for the foreseeable future. But also hopefully understand the opportunities, and there are opportunities out there. So it really it's been never more important than now, and will likely be over the coming months and years.
And Nicola, from your perspective, obviously you're dealing with other clients, so I presume you can add value in terms of seeing if they're, in terms of say even customer experience digital channels, if they're offering new things, you can share and bring value to the partnership by learning from what other clients are doing in other industries.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that has been one of the key elements that we've pulled on, because working cross-functionally across different sectors and different industries, it gives us that insight, which we are then able to share with clients. And as you said, that allows them to know about trends that are developing in different areas, and we can then adjust our game plan, and they can adjust theirs collectively to maximize the return potentially where we see opportunity. And I mean, I think that cross-functional element is really important.
And Mark, if somebody was on this webinar this morning that's only starting out on an outsourced relationship, maybe just putting the tender together, what tips or advice would you give them?
We seem to spend, in my recent experience, an inordinate amount of time on the preparation. Like it was, but I think that was a really valuable thing, because actually you're spending an awful lot of time understanding what you want as a business. And involving an awful lot of stakeholders, obviously, finance heavily involved, but all the various stakeholders that are impacted by whatever kind of aspect you're outsourcing, and making sure you have all their input. So we got input from a huge variety of stakeholders to make sure that we had a robust, kind of considered, clear view as to what we wanted, both from a kind of a scope of work point of view, but also the kind of the key priorities for us as a business in the type of partner that we wanted. So that was a huge, is a huge amount of work and effort, but it does pay off, because it then makes it so much easier when you come to kind of select a partner, because it's a huge commitment from both sides, and you've got to make sure that the fit is right, because when it's not, it obviously is very draining. So for the business, when it's the right fit, and I think when particularly both businesses take a longer kind of term view. I mean, we're just announced a strategy that's 2040, so where the kind of particularly energy, the kind of timescales you're looking at are vast, and as Nicola talked about, accepting that there are going to be bumps along the road, and that you need to be agile to be able to adapt to those. But if you've got the right mindset as both businesses, that you're working towards that same goal, I think you'll go a long way. But I would say a lot of it is the preparation and get the right fit from the very start.
Perfect. And before I ask Nicola a question, just to remind the audience to submit your questions. We have a lovely Amazon Echo speaker available. So any insights or questions, this is your last 5-minute call to put them in. Nicola, I was going to ask you the opposite question. So what if there's somebody on the call this morning and a strategic partnership relationship is not going well? So they're at that bump in the road. What advice would you give them in terms of straightening it out or building the bridge, as Mark would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally you have to ask yourself as a business, is this a relationship you want to enter into? Is this, as Mark said, is a huge commitments from both sides? And if the answer to that is yes, then it's about sort of stepping out of the detail and taking a bigger, broader view and trying to really go, okay, let's take a moment out. We are struggling on this. Why are we struggling on this? And I think having open and honest, frank discussions, yes, they're sometimes hard to do, but they're so valuable, because some of the frustrations that you may be feeling can potentially easily be solved on their side or vice versa. And I think recognizing that a relationship is going to evolve is really important, that they're going to be bumps along the way. That doesn't mean fundamentally the whole relationship is at risk. There's just an impasse, and it's about trying to find a way forward. And sometimes it's not about finding the solution for 4 months ahead. It's just about finding the solution for this week, for the next week, and taking those sort of baby steps to redefine the right rules of engagement to make the relationship work for both parties, because ultimately that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a relationship that works well on both sides.
Yeah, and certainly my experience is, both parties are bringing a lot to it in terms of the value and obviously the actual service. So you're investing, as Mark said, so much time and energy into it that, you don't want to be investing it in trying to sort out all sorts of arguments or fights or whatever it may be, or difference of opinion. And that's why I suppose the more open communication channels there are, the less likely that is to happen. Question from Susan just about the awards process itself. Now I'm my CCMA hat here, so I'm delighted with this sort of question. What was your experience? What advice would you give to other people in terms of putting themselves forward for this type of award?
Well, I'll speak from FMI's point of view, but probably from Mark, because it was a very collaborative process. there are two things that happen. I think, yes, it takes time to put the presentations and the details together as part of a submission. But what was really wonderful in doing that is you almost recognize all the things that the team have achieved. And we have an incredible team, the likes of Magella and Scott and all of the team who have achieved all those elements that allowed us to be in this position to win that award. That was really wonderful. We were, we sort of step back and go, oh, that was a good submission. We've done some great work. And so I think internally we definitely benefited from that. And then externally, it was wonderful to be able to celebrate the achievement of that award, because it was a really important one for us. And so when we won it, genuinely you felt everyone across the business celebrating with us, which was great.
And Mark, your experience?
Yeah, I'd echo what Nicola said. I think it's hugely important. I think a lot of the last couple of years have been spent just knuckling down and getting on with things, and it's been such a challenging time for an awful lot of businesses, that to actually just stop and pause and look at where we've come from. What were we doing even a number of months ago compared to what we're doing now. So it's hugely important just to stop and it was amazing when you kind of go through all the things that we've achieved and the challenges that we've encountered and overcome, just to remind yourself and to celebrate. It's I suppose we don't, unfortunately, maybe haven't had a huge amount of chance to celebrate in person over the last couple of years, but even virtually, just to recognize and to celebrate, and I think it does the team the world of good, and it's a lot of pride within our business when one of our outsource partners, valuable outsource partners like FMI, gets such an award. It's a great reflection on them, obviously, but on ourselves and the partnership that we have. So yeah, it was great, a great achievement.
And I must say, from a CCMA perspective, it has been a difficult 2 years from having it streamed the first year and sort of a small audience this year. And good news is we'll be back in the Aviva on the 26th of November, and we have lots of space. So we hope to see everybody out this year. But yeah, no, it's certainly the feedback we got, it was, especially the first year, it was just an occasion that people all got together on Zoom or whatever and had, events together. And, even though they were all separate, they still had an occasion where they all dressed up and had a bit of fun. And we obviously had all the competitions. And even, for me delivering the awards, and obviously, Nicola, it's great. I can see people in the background there. So it's great to see you're back in the contact centres open and offices are reopening. But I know the day I dropped it over and I met Magella, it's just a great buzz for everybody to have something and some accolade for the challenging 2 years that everybody's been through to achieve an award is great. So obviously, with my hat on, I'd be encouraging everybody to enter the awards. So please do. Mark, a question from Linda. What advice would you give an outsourcer that doesn't have the support from all the stakeholders within the business to make the partnership work?
That's that's a challenge. I think it is, as I said, crucially important. I think it's important to involve the outsource partner with those internal stakeholders. So there's nothing more beneficial than we found to hear it directly from the outsource. It's more powerful to hear it directly from your outsource partner. To hear, we talk about, we say to people internally, if they want to know what's going on, we can certainly listen to the voice of the agent. They can hear calls, they can hear the type of challenges that they're facing. So I think it's hugely important for internal people to understand the challenges that an outsource partner faces. And we've had call listening sessions internally, so that I don't think fully that myself and some other people that maybe aren't on the phones every day, that the challenges that brings and the pressures that brings. So we've had senior people kind of listen to those calls, and I think it's made a huge impact on them. So I think the more that, if you can get some of those internal stakeholders to meet, to hear, to get feedback directly from the outsource partner and have an understanding of their challenges, the more you're likely you'll be able to get that across the road. And the other thing I'd say is the importance of that outsource partner to the business, to understand the amount of work that they do, to continue to, we would, from an FMI's behalf, continue to weekly have a meeting to give that insight and feedback, and remind everybody all the work that is going on that may be unseen, every day on behalf of the company.
And Nicola, do you want to add any insights there?
No, I think Mark's covered them. I think, you know, hearing that directly and trying to engage as many of the stakeholders in that relationship is so valuable, because if you face that challenge alone, it's sometimes very difficult to convey all those messages. So, you know, that engagement with other stakeholders, I think, is hugely beneficial. Yeah.
And I think certainly from my perspective, and it was to Mark's original point, you know, you're outsourcing for a reason. You're outsourcing to get the skills that you don't have internally. So I think for the other stakeholders to appreciate all of the challenges and how difficult, you know, CX support is, and very much that, you know, encouraging them to visit the contact center, to listen to calls, really helps them appreciate. I know some of the big American companies years ago used to get the senior manager to go on the phones for so many hours every month to really see how difficult it was, and, you know, having the answers, having the information. So I'm sure lots of companies still do that. We've reached 11:30, so that flew. So thank you so much to Mark and Nicola. Linda, I'm going to give you the prize. I'm going to be the judge and jury today, so we'll be in touch, and we'll get that organised to send to you. But I know, Mark, Nicola, you're both obviously on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to come back and speak with you directly, you're happy for them to contact you via LinkedIn, and you can, you know, share further insights or offer some more advice. But can I thank everybody for their participation this morning? A recording of the webinar will be available in the next couple of days. And just to remind you, we have a webinar this time next week as well with PayPal, and it's on creating effortless customer experience, which is something we all aspire to. So the guys at PayPal are going to share some insights on a program they've undertaken over the last 2 years that's achieved really phenomenal results. So anybody on the webinar, all the details are on the website, so feel free to register. But Mark, Nicola, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. I know you're both very busy people. But thank you, and we hope to see you in November in the Aviva.
Definitely. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.